Hey, good morning to you. We're coming on the air with breaking news right now. We're standing by for an update on the war in Iran. That war now in its fifth day with new strikes overnight. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is about to give us an update on where things stand right now. We will go to the Secretary of Defense when that starts. Right now, though, let's go to the White House. Our chief White House correspondent, Peter Alexander, is standing by. And, Peter, there has been some new reporting out of the White House unit over precisely what led up to the strike that initiated this war some 5 days ago. What more can you tell us about that?
That's right. We'll keep a close eye in anticipation of the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. But the new reporting here from a senior U.S. official is that there was a phone call that took place last Monday, so about a week and a half ago, that the president received from Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, to President Trump, a call taken in the Situation Room, where the president was told by Netanyahu that Israel had determined that the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei would be meeting with his top advisors this past Saturday in Iran in a single location, and that a single devastating strike at that point would be enough to knock out the top leadership of the Iranian regime. We are told by this senior U.S. official that the CIA quickly confirmed that intelligence, and the official tells me that that is ultimately what determined the initial strikes take place that day.
All right, Peter, stand by. We'll come back to you after the briefing. Here again, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, joined by the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Dean Caine.
I stand before you today with one unmistakable message about Operation Epic Fury. America is winning, decisively, devastatingly, and without mercy. Under the direct command of President Trump, the War Department unleashed this operation early Saturday morning, just 4 days ago, which means we need to remember two things. First, we are only 4 days into this. Metrics are shifting, dust is settling, and more forces are arriving. It's very early, and as President Trump has said, we will take all the time we need to make sure that we succeed. Second, we are only 4 days into this, and the results have been incredible. Historic, really. Only the United States of America could lead this, only us. But when you add the Israeli Defense Forces, a devastatingly capable force, the combination is sheer destruction for our radical Islamist Iranian adversaries. They are toast, and they know it. Or at least, soon enough, they will know it. And we have only just begun to hunt, dismantle, demoralize, destroy, and defeat their capabilities, just 4 days in. Starting last night and to be completed in a few days, in under a week, the two most powerful air forces in the world will have complete control of Iranian skies, uncontested airspace. I hope all the folks watching understand what uncontested airspace and complete control means. It means we will fly all day, all night, day and night, finding, fixing, and finishing the missiles and defense industrial base of the Iranian military, finding and fixing their leaders and their military leaders, flying over Tehran, flying over Iran, flying over their capital, flying over the IRGC, Iranian leaders looking up and seeing only U.S. and Israeli air power every minute of every day until we decide it's over. And Iran will be able to do nothing about it. B-2s, B-52s, B-1s, Predator drones, fighters, controlling the skies, picking targets. Death and destruction from the sky all day long. We're playing for keeps. Our warfighters have maximum authorities granted personally by the president and yours truly. Our rules of engagement are bold, precise, and designed to unleash American power, not shackle it. This was never meant to be a fair fight, and it is not a fair fight. We are punching them while they're down, which is exactly how it should be. Thus far, Operation Epic Fury has delivered twice the air power of shock and awe of Iraq in 2003, minus Paul Bremer and the nation building. The campaign has 7 times the intensity of Israel's previous operations against Iran during the 12-day war, 7 times. And as President Trump said, more and larger waves are coming. We are just getting started. We are accelerating, not decelerating. Iran's capabilities are evaporating by the hour, while American strength grows fiercer, smarter, and utterly dominant. More bombers and more fighters are arriving just today. And now, with complete control of the skies, we will be using 500-pound, 1,000-pound, and 2,000-pound GPS and laser-guided precision gravity bombs, of which we have a nearly unlimited stockpile. We used more exquisite standoff munitions at the start, but no longer need to. Our stockpiles of those, as well as Patriots, remains extremely strong. The enemy can no longer shoot the volume of missiles they once did, not even close. And the chairman will lay out some of those percentages. So our air defenses and that of our allies have plenty of runway. We can sustain this fight easily for as long as we need to. And as I said yesterday, we set the terms. Now, you may not see much of it because the IRGC shut off the internet to the entirety of the country. They blind their people on purpose, just like they kill their own on purpose. Much was made of the volume of missiles Iran was able to shoot in the first few days. And sadly, as we projected, a few got through and killed 6 of our best, who will hopefully arrive home soon. We will avenge them, no doubt. But I liken Iran's predicament to a football team who scripted the first 20 plays of a game. The team knew what plays to run because their first few drives were scripted. But now that the game has started and the blitz is on, they don't know what plays to call, let alone how to get in the huddle and call those plays. Iran's senior leaders are dead. The so-called governing council that might have selected a successor, dead, missing, or cowering in bunkers, too terrified to even occupy the same room. Senior generals, mid-level officers, enlisted ranks, they can't talk or communicate, let alone mount a coordinated and sustained offensive. That's not great for morale. The Iranian Air Force is no more, built for 1996, destroyed in 2026. The Iranian Navy rests at the bottom of the Persian Gulf. Combat ineffective, decimated, destroyed, defeated, pick your adjective. In fact, last night, we sunk their prize ship, the Soleimani. Looks like POTUS got him twice. Their Navy, not a factor. Pick your adjective, it is no more. In fact, yesterday, in the Indian Ocean, and we'll play it on the screen there, an American submarine sunk an Iranian warship that thought it was safe in international waters. Instead, it was sunk by a torpedo. Quiet death. The first sinking of an enemy ship by a torpedo since World War II. Like in that war, back when we were still the War Department, we are fighting to win. Also, yesterday, the leader of the unit who attempted to assassinate President Trump has been hunted down and killed. Iran tried to kill President Trump, and President Trump got the last laugh. Now, this is not a mission accomplished situation. This is simply a reality check. The combination of U.S. and Israeli intelligence and combat power will control Iran, and will control it soon. Sure, Iran will still be able to shoot some missiles and still be able to launch one-way attack drones at civilian targets, and their proxies will attempt to attack our embassies, bases, and soft targets. They are terrorists, after all, and they need to target civilians because they can't fight toe-to-toe. But we will find them, and we will kill them. This is what the fake news misses. We've taken control of Iran's airspace and waterways without boots on the ground. We control their fate. But when a few drones get through or tragic things happen, it's front page news. I get it. The press only wants to make the president look bad, but try for once to report the reality. The terms of this war will be set by us at every step. As I said Monday, the mission is laser focused. Obliterate Iran's missiles and drones and facilities that produce them, annihilate its navy and critical security infrastructure, and sever their pathway to nuclear weapons. Iran will never possess a nuclear bomb, not on our watch, not ever. And this is why President Trump's moral clarity on Iran today is so vital. Unlike the past, where vague red lines and endless negotiations let Iran fund terror and inch ever so slightly toward a bomb, this president sees the threat plainly and acts decisively. No more half measures, especially when Iran is at its weakest. No more letting Tehran play for time while our people pay the price. His leadership ensures that we finish what we start and that we protect our warfighters by crushing the enemy before they can strike again. Our offensive operations, refined through months of relentless preparation, are unstoppable. And our defensive efforts are unprecedented. We have from the start put the protection of our troops ahead of everything else. Before we very publicly built up offensive combat power, we quietly ensured that our defensive posture and power was in place. And as we built up offensive combat power, we moved the vast majority of American troops, over 90% of Americans that were on our bases, what we say off the X, out of the range of Iranian fire. Our defensive shield is equally formidable, the most sophisticated air and missile defense network ever fielded. Thousands of Iranian missiles and drones have been intercepted and vaporized. Tens of thousands of American and allied lives protected. We have pushed every counter-UAS system possible forward, sparing no expense or capability. And like I said, this does not mean we can stop everything, but we ensured that the maximum possible defense and maximum possible force protection was set up before we went on offense. In closing, as President Trump told German Chancellor Merz yesterday, Iran negotiated in bad faith, stalling, scheming, and preparing to strike. And we acted decisively to defend our people, our interests, and our allies. President Trump took bold action, putting America first, the kind of bold action that the American people elected him to execute. To our steadfast partner, Israel, your mission is being executed with unmatched skill and iron determination. Fighting shoulder to shoulder with such a capable ally is a true force multiplier and a breath of fresh air. We salute your courage and your contribution. 4 days in, we have only just begun to fight. America fights to win, and in Operation Epic Fury, we are. May God's providence cover and protect our troops always. And with that, I turn it over to the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm here today to provide the American people and those of you in this room an update on Operation Epic Fury. First, it's with profound sadness and gratitude that I share the names of 4 of our 6 fallen heroes, all from the 103rd Sustainment Command, U.S. Army Reserves out of Des Moines, Iowa. Captain Cody Cork, Sergeant First Class Noah Tegens, Sergeant First Class Nicole Amore, and Sergeant Declan Cody. To the families of our fallen, we grieve with you today, and we look forward to welcoming your family members home at Dover in the coming days. Out of respect for the other families, we'll withhold the release of their names until next of kin notification is complete. And either myself or Admiral Cooper will release those names as soon as we can ensure that all of those families have been properly notified. To our Gold Star families, to our wounded warriors and their loved ones, we will never forget your sacrifice. Our nation stands with you, and we are eternally grateful for your courage, your resiliency, your devotion to this mission and to our nation. As the Secretary said, we're 4 days in, 103 hours into this campaign. The operation was again launched with clear military objectives designed to dismantle Iran's ability to project power outside of its borders, both today and in the future. First, we are targeting and eliminating Iran's ballistic missile systems to prevent them from threatening the U.S. Forces, partners, and interests in the region. Second, we are destroying the Iranian Navy, degrading its capacity, capability, and ability to conduct operations, not just in the Central Command AOR, but as the Secretary showed in the video, around the world. Third, we're ensuring Iran cannot rapidly rebuild or reconstitute its combat capability or combat power, and those phases will begin as the campaign continues. As of this morning, U.S. Central Command is making steady progress. Iran's theater ballistic missile shots fired are down 86% from the first day of fighting, with a 23% decrease just in the last 24 hours. And their one-way attack drone shots are down 73% from the opening days. This progress has allowed CENTCOM to establish localized air superiority across the southern flank of the Iranian coast and penetrate their defenses with overwhelming precision and firepower. We will now begin to expand inland, striking progressively deeper into Iranian territory and creating additional freedom of maneuver for U.S. forces. Let me explain a little bit about how we're thinking about staying ahead of the enemy. First, over the past several weeks, Admiral Cooper and the CENTCOM team have refined their operational approach to the region. Their planners identified key centers of gravity that would allow Iran to project power outside of its borders. They thought about how to isolate critical vulnerabilities and determined where, with precision, the greatest strategic effect could be achieved. As a result of this, CENTCOM is now shifting in day 4 already from large, deliberate strike packages using standoff munitions at range outside an enemy's ability to shoot at us, now into stand-in precision strikes overhead Iran. As the Secretary said, this is a point of munitions transition from standoff munitions to stand-in munitions like joint direct attack munitions, which are GPS-aided free-fall weapons, and other things like Hellfires, etc. This will allow the joint force to deliver significantly increased precision effects on the target. The throttle is coming up, as the Secretary said, as opposed to ramping down. This will allow us to maintain consistent pressure on the adversary over the coming days, disrupt their launch timelines, and impose cost every day around the clock. I know there have been a lot of questions about munitions. We have sufficient precision munitions for the task at hand, both on the offense and defense. But I want to tell you, teammates, as a matter of practice, I don't want to be talking about quantities. And I know there's been a great debate about that, and I appreciate the interest, but just know that we consider that an operational security matter. Let me flip to the map here. Hopefully I don't kill anybody with a laser pointer. As I mentioned earlier, and for you with the camera right there, my friend, I hope I don't ricochet off and hurt you. Over the initial days, the U.S. Joint Forces continued to attack and attrit ballistic missile capabilities as well as integrated air defense capabilities along the southern axis. Along the northern axis, Israel and the Israeli Air Force has predominantly been working integrated air defense targets along the northern flank, as well as medium-range ballistic missile capability as well. From the sea, the USS Ford has continued to project combat power here, as well as the bomber pulses that we talked about in the opening days of this briefing. Along the southern axis, the USS Abraham Lincoln Strike Group has continued to provide pressure from the sea along the southeastern side of the coast and has been attriting naval capability all along the strait and up into the Arabian Gulf at a size and scale sufficient efficiently to address the targets required. To date, we've hit over 2,000 targets, as Admiral Cooper said in his video last night. We've destroyed more than 20 Iranian naval vessels, including, in addition to the frigate outside of the area, one submarine, and effectively neutralized at this point in time Iran's major naval presence in theater out there. As the Secretary showed the video, for the first time since 1945, a United States Navy fast attack submarine.
You have been listening to the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. They're updating us on the war in Iran from the Pentagon. The highlights there from the Secretary of Defense, especially: America is winning. More forces are arriving. We've only just begun, promising death and destruction from the skies in Iran. Joining us now to offer some more insight into the U.S. military operations, we're joined now by retired Colonel Steve Warren, an NBC News military analyst, former Pentagon spokesman as well. Colonel, thank you so much for being here with us. We're getting a sense of what we've been able to accomplish over the first 4 days or so. Were you able to get a sense of where the war effort goes from here?
Yes, it's interesting. They really focused on how well the American forces have dismantled Iranian air defenses, how Americans now have unrestricted movement inside Iranian airspace. So what that means, in my view, is that they will now use precision-guided munitions to strike very specific targets in order to reduce the Iranians' capability to rebuild what we've already destroyed.
Precision gravity bombs. We heard the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs talk about that. What are those? How significant of a role could those play?
They're going to play a massive role. These are very good weapons, very inexpensive. Up until now, we've been using long-range precision missiles, very high cost, very sophisticated. These gravity bombs, they can be dropped out of a B-52 bomber, close in, and much higher hit rate.
It was also interesting to hear the chairman talk about the Iranian military capabilities and how much they've been degraded over the first few days. He said roughly 86% missiles are down, 86% since the first day.
Yeah, that's right. And he's also mentioned that he sunk half the Navy, right? Yeah. A huge chunk of the Navy. First U.S. Navy torpedo shot since World War II, according to the Secretary. Really impressive.
Colonel, stand by for me. Joined now by our chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel. He is live for us in Israel. And Richard, I know that you've been talking to people inside Iran. What are they telling you about what they expect, what they anticipate as these days are set to turn into weeks?
So the Iranian regime still does have its supporters, and we've seen tens of thousands of people on the streets. But I managed to speak to several Iranians, and that is difficult because communications are so cut off. And they told me that they support that the Iranian clerical regime is under attack. They want to see it go. But they told me right now people are too afraid to go outside because state media has made it more than clear that if anyone goes out on the streets and tries to challenge the system in any way, they will be shot on spot.
You've been listening to that NBC News special report as we cover this press conference here with the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, as well as the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Caine. Let's listen in as they begin to take questions in the room.
Thank you, Secretary Hegseth. Mary Margaret with the Daily Wire. Couple questions for you and then one for General Caine. Can you tell us more about how we took out the leader who was the leader of the group that was trying to assassinate President Trump? And then Turkey's defense ministry says NATO air defense systems intercepted an Iranian ballistic missile headed towards Turkish airspace. Could this trigger NATO's Article 5, and was it the U.S. who shot it down?
On the first question, we've known for a long time that Iran had intentions on trying to kill President Trump and or other U.S. officials. And while that was not the focus of the effort by any stretch of the imagination, in fact, never raised by the president or anybody else, I ensured and others ensured that those who were responsible for that were eventually part of the target list. It wasn't the beginning of the effort. We were focused on missiles and launchers, and that's the focus. But ultimately, if we had the opportunity to get at those who are trying to get at Americans specifically, we would. And so we eventually had the opportunity to do that from the air. And then on the matter with Turkey, I'll have to get back to you on exactly what the intercept looked like at that. We're aware of that particular engagement, although no sense that it would trigger anything like Article 5. No. tie right there. You got a tie on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Tom Bateman with the BBC. Can you give us an update on what the administration knows, what you know now about the reported strike on a girls' school in southern Iran on Saturday?
All I can say is that we're investigating that. We, of course, never target civilian targets, but we're taking a look and investigating that. Red tie in front.
Just on the basis that with the information you would have, your reconnaissance abilities, ability to gather information, I mean, it's several days on now. So is there any clarity on whose munition this was?
We're investigating it. Thank you.
Secretary, so there are reports that the administration is considering arming Iranian Kurdish groups. So could you please clarify that whether any such plan has been authorized and whether Congress or regional partners has been notified and consulted?
All I would say is none of our objectives are premised on the support or the arming of any particular force. So what other entities may be doing, we're aware of, but our objectives aren't centered on that. Green, right there.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mike Lynn, Washington Times. Can you talk a little bit about the deconfliction process that's going on? You have two parallel operations, Epic Fury and Roaring Lion. How are you making sure they're not interfering with each other?
Sure, I'm happy to take that. Thank you for the question. We have liaison officers on both sides. There are U.S. CENTCOM teammates out in Israel, and there are Israeli Defense Force teammates at the relevant command and control nodes within the U.S. CENTCOM enterprise. Routinely, Admiral Cooper is talking to the IDF Chief of Defense, and I will occasionally speak to him through the arc of this. I've spoken to him a few times already. That allows us to coordinate, integrate, and synchronize activities while maintaining separate efforts.
And when I said a breath of fresh air, I really meant it. Usually it's us with some ancillary benefits from allies who are maybe willing but not as capable. When you have both the will and the capability of an ally that can really bring things to bear, we take certain targets, they take certain targets, and when you coordinate it, it has incredible effects. Right here.
Secretary Hegseth, with respect to House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries' statement that the Iran mission will end in failure, what kind of message does that send to our enemies, and what does it do to the motivation of our troops?
Well, I've been through that movie before with the Democrats rooting against the country. Our generation saw that in our battlefields. I think it's pretty unprecedented and unfortunate that it would occur 4 days in to an operation where, as the chairman laid out, America's best are operating in an incredibly challenging environment where they're having incredible success, but they're meeting a determined adversary. And he's been privy to briefs that we've provided. He knows how effective this has been. He's being disingenuous, which we're used to. Right here.
Thank you for taking my question. Heather Mullins, Lindell TV. One of the questions I have is just really regarding the intelligence that indicated that this was something the U.S. had to get involved with at the time that you guys did. We had Operation Midnight Hammer back in June. We obliterated their nuclear facilities. What was the intelligence that suggested that somehow they became a threat once again that required us to get involved with Operation Epic Fury?
I appreciate the question. The evidence in front of us since the 12-day war was that Iran had no intention of actually negotiating a nuclear deal that truly meant they did not have a pathway to the nuclear bomb. And they had a moment. Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, two of the best negotiators in the world, poured into that negotiation, giving them every single possible opportunity to release that ambition. And they didn't. And the intelligence that we saw they didn't intend to do it in good faith, that they had the intentions eventually to get to a place where they could have a conventional shield to block their nuclear capabilities, as I talked about yesterday. So I would separate the what from the when a little bit. The what is they've been killing Americans for 47 years. They have thousands of missiles pointed at us. They have ongoing nuclear ambitions, and they're at the weakest they've ever been. So the when became in a particular, hey, what makes the most sense to do this to ensure that the narrow objectives we have of ensuring they never have a nuclear weapon have a maximum effect? Yes, right here.
Thank you, Secretary Hegseth. I had two questions. First, what is your message to Iran's allies, namely Russia and China, who have called for an immediate end to hostilities?
I don't have a message for them, and they're not really a factor here. and our issue is not with them. It's with the nuclear ambitions of Iran.
Absolutely. And are any so-called fully autonomous weapons or other AI tools being used in Operation Epic Fury?
We've got a lot of autonomous systems, or systems that drones and others incorporated with smart AI aspects to them, but a lot of which I can't talk about here. Yeah. Yellow, right there. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. As you know, China is accusing the United States of invading in Iran, a sovereign nation, and North Korea, which cooperate with Iran on nuclear development, has declared its commitment to protecting Iran. What is the United States' strategic response to this? And I have a second one. How many allies join with the United States to fighting against Iran? Do you have any numbers?
Well, I think what you're seeing right now is a response in the region to the belligerence of Iran and the willingness of them to target civilian airports, civilian hotels, civilian locations, civilian oil infrastructure of their Gulf neighbors who would have preferred not to be in conflict, didn't want to, but now realize that this is something that has to be dealt with. So whether it's UAE or Qatar or Bahrain or Kuwait or Saudi, on different levels, they're reaching out to us, whether they're going on offense, which they are, whether they're giving us additional access, basing, and overflight. We're working very closely and collaborating with them. Also on air defenses. The air defense capabilities of those countries are significant, and when combined with ours, and we coordinate, it brings simplicity to the shot doctrine, so we make sure we're using less munitions but being more effective with what we shoot at. And as it pertains to other countries, I'll sort of give the same question. They don't really bear on the case of Iran. We're going to deal with Iran's nuclear ambitions, and that'll send plenty of signals in the process. Right there. Purple.
Are you going to help get Americans out of the region? The military going to help? Secretary, I have two questions. One question for you and the other question for Mr. Chairman. You ruled out that you are not engaging with the Kurdish forces, Iranian Kurdish forces, to incursion from the Kurdistan region to Iran. But now, and today, Iranian said that under threat in the Kurdistan region, they said clearly if there is any incursion from the Kurdistan region, they will attack all the Kurdistan region and go war with the Kurdistan region. What's your comment on that? And a question for Mr. Chairman, given comments that the U.S. forces might be deployed if necessary, under what specific conditions would you determine that deploying U.S. boots on the ground is necessary, and how would such a decision support and advance your stated strategic goals?
Well, I'm not going to comment on U.S. boots on the ground. I think that's a question for policymakers, and I don't make policy, I execute policy. I will say on the question in the back corner about helping Americans get out, first, it's a great opportunity to encourage everybody in the region to go to the State Department and register. Secretary Rubio's been trying to get that word out, and I'd ask you to help us with that, to have folks register. We've also opened up space available seats as C-17s and other airplanes come in to try to help folks get out. But that's really a State Department matter. But to answer your question, that's what we've been doing.
Absolutely. Last question right here.
Secretary Hegseth, thank you. Reagan Reese with the Daily Caller. You touched on this in your opening remarks, but I'm hoping you could expand on it a bit. It's been reported that Iran might be trying to outlast our ability to intercept their missiles. It sounds like you guys are saying they don't have the ability to do so. Is that the case? Can they outlast us in their ability to do that?
Iran cannot outlast us. We're going to ensure through violence of action and our offensive capabilities and our defensive capabilities, as I said, that we set the tone and the tempo of this fight. That's why stories and speculation about different things that try to make it look like we're limited in what we can do. The only limits we have in this is President Trump's desire to achieve specific effects on behalf of the American people. And that's why we don't talk about, you can say 4 weeks, but it could be 6, it could be 8, it could be 3. Ultimately, we set the pace and the tempo. The enemy is off balance, and we're going to keep them off balance. And we know their ability to shoot versus our ability to defend. That difference gets wider and wider every day. Our defense gets better, their offensive capabilities diminish. As we are going into ammunitions that we, as we said, have tens of thousands of and can drop unlimited supplies on with even more effects than the standoff munitions we have now, which is why when we say the throttle's going up, and it's going to stay on high. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
You've been listening to a Pentagon press briefing. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth declaring we have only just begun to fight as he and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Caine, update the nation and the world on the operation in the Middle East.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.